Satyam, start. Where is he? Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the School of Human Settlements, Exam University, I, Shaudra Ghosh, extend a warm welcome to all of you to this plenary session 2 of the 10th Annual Research on City Summits. The School of Human Settlements is committed to advancing knowledge, professional practice, and policy engagement in sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban development. Through its academic programs, research initiatives, and platforms such as ARCs, the school seeks to foster meaningful dialogue among scholars, practitioners, policymakers, and students on the evolving challenges facing cities today. As cities confront growing uncertainties arising from climate change, infrastructure stress, demographic shifts, and governance complexities, urban resilience has emerged as a central concern. Beyond physical infrastructure, resilience is increasingly shaped by the institutions, policies, and governance frameworks that guide urban decision making. It is in the context that today's plenary focuses on the theme Operationalizing Urban Resilience Through Governance, Insights from Singapore. This session invites us to explore how governance system, policies, coherence, and long-term planning can translate the concept of resilience into actionable strategies. Drawing lessons from Singapore's experience, the plenary encourages reflection on how cities, particularly in the global south, can strengthen their capacities to anticipate, absorb, and adapt to urban risks while ensuring equity and sustainability. To guide us through this critical discussion, we are honored to have an eminent speaker with us today. It is my privilege to introduce Dr. Jackie Lee Ting Ong. Dr. Ong is a sustainability and urban studies scholar from Singapore whose work spans urban resilience, climate adaptation, sustainable infrastructure, and governance-led approach to urban development. Through research, policy engagement, and collaborative projects, Dr. Ong explores how cities can strengthen adaptive capacities, integrate resilience into planning frameworks, and build equitable pathway for growth. Her professional experience includes work with leading research and policy institutions, where she has contributed to urban resilience strategies, climate action planning, and sustainability transitions. She has been involved in projects focused on climate vulnerability assessments, resilience-oriented governance frameworks, and integrating sustainability outcomes into the urban policymaking. Her recent work includes research on mainstreaming resilience thinking into governance system. Through her scholarship and advisory work, Dr. Ong continues to contribute to global discourse on how cities can operationalize resilience not merely as a concept but as a governance practice, with special attention to institutional capacity, policy coherence, and socially inclusive outcomes. At this point, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Tathagat Chatterjee from School of Human Settlements and will like to hand over the session to welcome our speaker formally and moderate this plenary session.
So, thank you, Shaudra. And Jackie, very warm welcome to India, virtually that is. And we hope that sometime we will get a time to visit us in India. Singapore is not that far away. And in India, often, Singapore is seen some kind of a model city. And many Indian cities try to evaluate Singapore and learn from Singapore. So it's really a great opportunity to have you over here. Over to you. You can start.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Tat. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be part of this ARC 10.10. Yeah. For today's session, I will share with you how city can operationalize urban resilience to governance and integrated management. I will use Singapore, as Professor Tat has shared, as a reference case, not as a model to replicate, but rather as a learning laboratory for understanding how resilient can be translated into our institutional practice. My central argument is simple. Urban resilience succeeds or fail based on how cities govern complexity. Too often, resilience is framed around infrastructure or technology. While these are essential, they rarely succeed without governance system that coordinate institutions, align planning decisions, and build long-term societal trust. So for today, I will share with you a 5C governance framework and share and how it operates across 3 pillars of resilient urban development. First of all, we all know that today cities, especially the global south cities, are at a critical juncture. Across much of the global south, urbanization is accelerating rapidly, while climate risks such as flooding, extreme heat, water stress, and sea levels rise are intensifying. At the same time, inequality and infrastructure deficits are expanding. These pressures are not isolated cases. They interact and amplify one another. When flooding disrupts transport, it affects employment, healthcare access, and social mobility. Urban resilience is therefore no longer about responding to a rare disaster. It is about sustaining city functionally under constant pressure. City must govern uncertainty as the new normal. And we can see increasingly disaster are cascading system failure rather than single hazard event. For instance, when heavy rainfall overwhelms drainage system, transport network fail. When transport fails, livelihoods are affected. When livelihoods are disrupted, inequality deepens. This demonstrates a crucial insight. If risks are systemic, resilience must also be systemic. And we can see sustainability is now reframed. Sustainability and climate resilience are often discussed as separate agenda. In reality, they are inseparable. Long-term environmental sustainability depends on whether city can absorb shocks and adapt to change. And without resilience, sustainability gains can be reversed rapidly by climate event. Put it simply, resilience is what allowed sustainability to endure. And today, through history, we can see that resilience has often been framed as an engineering problem, stronger drainage system, higher seawall, or emergency response capabilities. But infrastructure alone does not create resilience. Yet resilience depends on institutional coordination, participatory governance, evidence-based planning, social legitimacy. And we know that resilience is ultimately about how decisions are made, by whom, and whether community trusts those decisions. Many cities today still approach resilience through standalone projects. However, resilience is embedded across governance system, planning framework, and institutional relationship. Urban management, therefore, should determine who absorbs risk, who benefit from investment, which community remain vulnerable. This is where governance becomes the central determinants of resilience outcome. At this point, I would like to share how I frame resilience. And resilience is framed into 3 interrelated pillars. in here you can see the first pillar is about integrated urban governance, and in here coordinating land use, transport, housing, and environmental planning is categorized in this pillar. Pillar 2 is about climate responsive urban system, designing infrastructure and ecosystem to respond to climate realities. And in pillar 3, we have the inclusive and adaptive urban development. And in this pillar, it ensures resilience benefits are society distributed and politically legitimate. This pillar represents what cities must govern. And let's now move to the case of Singapore in operationalizing urban resilience. And as we know, Singapore provides quite a compelling governance case because of its structural constraints and development trajectory. Singapore is a very small island city-state covering approximately about 734 square kilometers with about a population of now about 6 million people. And this makes it one of the most densely populated countries in the world. At independence in 1965, Singapore faced very severe development challenges. And this include with limited natural resources, severe housing shortages, high employment rate, water insecurity and shortage, and social fragmentation. But however, over the 5 decades, Singapore transformed from a lower income post-colonial trading port into a very highly urbanized global city. It is often described as a first world city in a small island setting today. However, what makes Singapore analytically valuable here is not wealth alone. Many wealthy cities struggle with fragmentations and climate vulnerability. Singapore's distinctive feature is in its governance-led development model, where long-term planning, institutional coordination, and strong implementation capacity have been systematically prioritized. Singapore is therefore not a blueprint, but a powerful demonstration of how governance can compensate for geographical vulnerability. And Singapore case can be useful for a global south city, as many global cities face the same problems at rapid urban expansions, informal settlements, fiscal and institutional constraints. And so therefore the key lesson from Singapore is not infrastructure skill. It is governance, integration, and decision-making discipline. Let me introduce you to the 5C framework and for operation for resilience urban development. In this framework here, the 5C describe resilience as governance relationship, which comprises of 5C, and this 5C include cooperation, collaboration, co-creation, and co-ownership. Yeah, the 5C framework explains how resilience is delivered in practice. It shifts resilience from being a conceptual goal to an operational governance approach. Resilience is not through standalone project or infrastructure alone. It emerges through strong adaptive relationship across institutions, sectors, and community. And in here, we can see cooperation is about how it aligns effort and resources, and cooperation focuses on stakeholders working alongside with each other towards shared objectives while maintaining their individual role and mandates. It ensures policy alignment, resource sharing, and coordinated implementation across agency, sector, and organization. Doing well, this category help to reduce duplications and policy fragmentation. It enables efficient use of financial, technical, and human resources, support coordinated crisis and risk management. And about collaboration is about working together to solve complex problems. Yeah, and collaboration go beyond coordination by bringing stakeholders together to jointly design solutions to complex and interconnected challenges such as climate adaptation, social vulnerability, or infrastructure resilience. About communication is about how we ensure information flow across institutions, sectors, and community. It support transparency, risk awareness, and stakeholder engagement, which are essential for resilient government. It does help to, when it operates well, it helps to improve early warning, crisis response, and knowledge sharing, build public trust and stakeholder buy-in, enable evidence-based and inclusive decision making. About co-creation, it is about how we design solutions with stakeholders. Co-creations involve stakeholders, particularly community and end user, actively in designing and shaping solutions rather than being passive recipient policy or projects. Yeah, it ensures solutions, local relevance, and socially inclusive. Co-ownership, on the other hand, is about sharing responsibility and long-term stewardship. Co-ownership ensures that stakeholders share responsibility for implementation, monitoring, and sustaining resilient initiative. It fosters an accountability and long-term commitment beyond initial project cycle. Therefore, it encourages shared governance and stewardship and strengthen maintenance and sustainability of the initiative and build collective accountability. This 5C matters because it explains how resilience is implemented operationally, not just conceptually. The 5C mutually reinforcing one another. Weakness in one undermines the whole resilience emerges from the relationship, not the project. How we link the 5C to the 3 pillars of urban resilience. Here's the example that the linkage. In here, we can see the pillar represent what city is deliver, and the 5C represent how city deliver resilience effectively. And let me now move into how this 5P is operated in Singapore with some examples. The case of Singapore, we have the here show the 3 pillars of integrated urban resilience pillar. This is the first pillar, the governance, and we have the governance and the long-term planning. And the second pillar, climate adaptation and nature-based solution, with the third pillar, inclusive and social resilience. And now let me elaborate more on this 3 pillars in our next slide. For the first pillar, we can see that in Singapore integrated planning system is anchored by the long-term planning. Yeah, the framework known as the concept plan and master plan. The concept plans look sometimes beyond 40 to 50 years ahead and integrate land use, infrastructure, housing needs, and economic development and climate risk, which align very closely with our UN SDG goal number 11 on sustainable city and community for livable cities. Urban development decisions in Singapore involves coordinated planning between agencies responsible for transport, environment, water management, and housing. Yeah, and in Singapore, for instance, the housing, as we are highly urban densely country, and with very limited lands, land is a constraint, and therefore development is built along transit-oriented housing development, where Singapore is systematically integrate housing development with mass transit infrastructure and transit corridors. Over almost close to 90% of Singapore residents live in public housing. So with most estate located, most estate now are located within walking distance of rail station, school and healthcare services. And this help to reduce congestions, so improve accessibility, and at the same time, lower carbon emissions simultaneously. Singapore use scenario planning to evaluate sea level rise and extreme rainfall projection way decades ahead. And this allowed policy to be stress tested before implementation. And another example, Singapore long-term planning involve a joint risk assessment exercise with multi-ministry for investment, for economic development. Public are consulted and involved in land use planning to ensure inclusive planning in the planning. Here we can see the 5C that is very strongly focused in is the cooperation among the agency and very strong communication with share of data and planning assumption. There is also ownership and co-creations of the vision for tomorrow. As seen in this diagram, public engagement is very common, where we have for instance, the URA master plan, which recently we have also the airport terminal 5 for development and few other new housing estate plan making together with the public involved. The second pillar that I'm going to talk about is climate adaptations and environmental resilience. In Singapore, Singapore integrate climate adaptation directly into urban infrastructure. Singapore is a very is a tropical country, and heat is a problem, and also because of the Singapore is always facing also the sea level rises, the land, so integrate climate adaptation directly into urban features is one of the key missions of the government. And in here, because of the early day, we have water shortages. So having integrated water management is very crucial. And today, Singapore not only able to sell water supply, and sometimes even help Malaysia in terms of supporting them in the water supply, typically the Johor Bahru. Yeah, how we do that? Singapore, we have the water strategy integrated management, which integrates stormwater management, flood control, drinking water supply, and urban design into a single system. Urban reservoir is now double as recreation spaces and flood storage system. So it's not only used for drinking water, but also for social recreation. So there is co-creation and co-ownerships of the water usage. And the Marina Barrage is another flagship example of multifunctional resilient infrastructure that Singapore is building. It serves 3 simultaneous roles, such as flood control for the city center, fresh water reservoir, and public recreation space. This project requires coordination across water agency, urban planner, engineer, and community stakeholders, with a lot of direct session collaborations in technical sector and communication through public engagement on water conservation and co-ownerships on citizenships and value the space as public infrastructure. Coastal adaptations is also another problem in Singapore, and Singapore try to look ahead, and we now have a long-term coastal adaptation strategy, again combining engineering, land recommendation, nature-based solution such as mangrove restoration. Singapore approach for climate adaptation is to with the approach of city in nature, no longer city in the garden in the past. Today is city in nature approach, where we build, we have the green connector, network linking green corridor across the island to reduce the urban heat island effect, and at the same time encourage active mobility because of the green connector. It allowed more conducive mobility going for outdoor activities. This is a slide, I mean, an example to share with you how Singapore is increasingly moving towards the nature approach, city in the nature approach. I see a lot of greenery, more trees, and more sharing of co-ownership of spaces, places, and public responsible for the use of space. The third pillar is about urban, is about inclusive and social resilience. And in this case, Singapore treats society policy as resilience infrastructure. For instance, public housing is a very good example as a social infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier on, about close to 90% of Singapore population live in planned public housing, integrated with school, transport, healthcare, and green spaces. And Singapore has also an aging population. By on statistic, today, currently, we have about 22% of aging population, which is over 65 years and above, and birth rate is very low. So public housing is becoming one of the social infrastructure to develop. And again, Singapore is a multicultural society to create social harmony for different races. We have currently about 75% of Chinese, 15% of Malay, 7% Indian, and the rest are minority group like Caucasians and other races. So the allocations for public housing to create harmony, the allocation for public housing is ratio, according to ratio combination of the Singapore population. Yeah, and owner of public living in housing development board, so known as HDB flat, consulted on upgrading and redesigning of the recreational activities along the housing development. And to have an inclusive society, communication is very important because of the 4 key races. We have languages to use for communication is always the 4 official language, Mandarin, English, Tamil, and Malay, so that all the different races are informed. Yeah, and this therefore reduce social vulnerability during crisis and strengthen social cohesion. And and we can see strongly co-creation and co-ownership play a very strong part in this resilience. Some of the images here, there are some of initiatives here in Singapore, very inclusive society, where you can see there's a lot of accessible to many places through public places, yeah, and inclusive. Even we have a lot increase. I mean, autistic children are also inclusive in the classroom and not isolated. And to build a social resilience, we have the initiative of so-called Skill Future to develop Singaporean to be forever can be employed easily, no matter whether how old they are. Or so employment rate is have been relatively low in Singapore. And as I mentioned, 65. I mean, by next decade, we will have about 25% of our population with 65 years and above. So Age Well is another initiative that the government is involving and working with the public and different agencies. And to enhance the 3 pillars of resilience, Singapore government also include education and public communication as part of the resilient infrastructure. Singapore integrate sustainability education into school and public campaign. This build behavior resilience and long-term public trust. Sustainability education is embedded in school and public campaigns around water conservation and climate awareness across the higher institution. Sustainability is also a compulsory cross-disciplinary core curriculum that any higher institution student must undertake, and with different students from different disciplines, so as to build their cross-culture strength in terms of the global and globalizations in the development. In addition, agency, such as WDA, World Development Agency, or World Singapore now, help citizens, especially to unemployed and aged population, to find employment and re-employment to skill future plans. And all these are with a very low cost and sometimes without any cost. And this normalize sustainable behavior across generation. So resilience become a shared social norm rather than a top-down policy directive. Another tool to enhance our urban sustainability resilience is Singapore Smart Nation Initiative, which integrates technology into urban governance. And some example, of course, is the real-time flood monitoring sensors, digital twin model used for planning simulations. AI-related costs are laid out for all citizens to pick up and to develop their acuteness to technology-related development. And 5C, of course, we can see communication to citizen reporting platform, co-creation to digital citizen participation and cooperation across government agencies sharing data. Technology here is used as a governance enabler rather than a standalone solution. So here are some of the initiatives that we have. Yeah, all Singaporeans have a password SingPass and national digital identity, paying cashless society, and some district is implementing fully, like Punggol district, and all these are part of the government Smart Nation initiative, and to building a more connected, innovative, and inclusive nation. Yeah, and here is another example of how we communicate on water resilience and for environment too, so that we have a more urban resilient, more sustainable in our development, and to meet the COP, or the COP30 commitment, and so on. So at this point, we can see some lesson that we can learn from global city, probably can learn, and with some transfer principle here. City must adapt lesson to local reality. This include informal settlement, fiscal constraint, political structure, community government, and for resilient strategy, it must be locally legitimate to succeed, which include transferable principles such as integration across sector rather than silo governance, and long-term planning, which combined with adaptive flexibility, embedding resilience into everyday urban system, and investing in institutional capacity. Singapore is doing well, and however, Singapore approaches require contextual adaptation to the global South City for its local fiscal and social reality. Some key pitfalls to avoid for local government and in social context, which include technology solutionism, infrastructure first, people last approach. Yeah, and copy paste policy transfer, or ignoring local knowledge. Yeah, and Singapore demonstrates the cumulative power of governance relationship over time. The 5C framework matters because it really enables government integration, build trust and legitimacy, sustain resilience across political cycle, translate policy ambitions and operational reality. To conclude, I would like to share urban resilience is a governance challenge. urban resilience is not something city install through infrastructure alone. It is something that city must continuously govern collectively, inclusively, and adaptively. If city invests in governance capability as serious as they invest in infrastructure, resilience can become both achievable and sustainable. And finally, urban resilience is not something cities install. It is something they govern together. I think I would like to end here and thank you very much. And I look forward for your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. That was a fascinating talk. It is indeed you have nailed the issue that the software of governance is often more important than the hardware of infrastructure.
Yep.
And what I see in case of Singapore, there is a sixth C, that is social coherence. That has been a very integral part of Singapore's achievement. Now, I would like to open the floor for people to ask questions.
Thank you, Dr. Jackie, uh, for such an insightful session on the juncture between sustainable cities and urban resilience. So, as you had rightfully said, resilience is not, and it also got reinforced by Professor Tathagata, that resilience is not just physical infra, it's the softer connections between the institutions as well. So, my question here is what specific institutional mechanisms have been most critical to ensure that silos do not form, like you had said, between climate adaptation, housing, transport, the allocation of green spaces, towards realizing an urban resilience?
Well, there are some barriers here, especially, sometimes it's because of the political system and financial circle. As we know, sometimes in certain, city, the government system, right? Sometimes you have short-term government. So sometimes the change of government, the change of whole system and change of communications itself. If we do not have the 5C in place, and this will become weakened. Because of the lack of communication, lack of trust, among stakeholders, and there are also sometimes limited capacity for participating in planning. So overcome this require a lot on the leadership's commitment and transparent communication and incentive for collaboration. Yeah, I hope I have answered your question. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other?
Thank you, Jackie Madam. I just wanted to know how you are enforcing your all these 5C and all developments in your state, Singapore, because some legal enforcement is required. So how strong is it, and how we can adopt that in our country also?
Okay, yeah, 5C can be used. Thank you for a question. Yeah, 5C can be, is, as I mentioned, it's operational because it forms, especially the one on collaboration and cooperation, it forms the foundation first, right? Before and through, the foundation is built, and then through communication with the C, communications and clear communication can build trust and transparency. So everyone is informed. Yeah. And then with that, we can better inform different stakeholders. And in fact, the 5C should be work hand in hand. Yeah, to have a better, better urban sustainability. And of course, in Singapore case, we started more on the bottom part, yeah, the collaboration and and collaboration and cooperation. Yeah. And subsequently, over time, we developed into more on communications and more trust. And today, on the highest, on the peak itself, is co-creation and co-ownership. In many of the initiatives, we are moving more towards towards the 5C, which is more inclusive, that involve everyone. When Singapore first developed, it's somehow to become it's quite top down in terms of the planning, but over times, with experience, we learn about the how to integrate all these 5C into more urban resilient society. Yeah, it has been embedded as I share in my slides earlier on, right? The 5C work as the 5C is act as enable, is seen as how to put it, at the operational deliver, and the pillar represent how city, what are the things the city need to be delivered. Yeah, so how city the 5C, as I explained each of the C, it represents how city can deliver resistance effectively.
Is there any punitive measures if somebody defies the rules and regulations?
Sorry, I don't get you.
I mean, is there any punitive measures if somebody defies the rules and regulations? Because everybody are not under one umbrella.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
In our country, we see a lot of diversifications are there.
Yeah. In Singapore, it's also known as the fine city, F-I-N-E, fine. Yeah, fine city. Fine in a sense, whatever sometimes you go against all those rules and regulation, you get fined. Yeah, like if you even like you don't flush the toilet right in public, if you are caught, you can be fined. Yeah, if you litter, you get fined. If you smoke in public, you get fined. Yeah, so a lot of fine. Yeah, but we are trying to now more to education, as I also mentioned. Education and communication is now become part of a resilient infrastructure, and communication is truly very important. Yeah, so communicate, and also we try to build a more a so-called a society that is embedded. All these quality are embedded in our DNA, rather than you have to be told what to do. Yeah, in the past, you have to be told what to do. But today, after years of implementation of all this policy and to communication, collaboration with society, with the public, and sometimes co-ownership of certain initiative. So this becomes, we are moving more towards a gracious society. And so this is also part of the social resilience.
Okay, I think we have one last question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My name is Deepak, and I'm currently pursuing MBA from Urban Management and Governance from Exam University. And my question to you, ma'am, is you emphasize that housing should be treated as resilient infrastructure. How can cities balance this long-term resilience goals with short-term political and physical pressures, especially in cities like India, where informal settlements dominate urban growth?
Okay. Well, thank you for a question. Very interesting. Yeah. In Singapore, if you operate, I mean, if you operationalize the 5C, right? You can see, first the collaboration, right? Collaboration in the housing itself. We work with the different agency, and sometimes through building the infrastructure, but at the same time, some policy with, like, we have the central provisional fund with the local, because during their term of employment, yeah, they have some kind of compulsory saving. So this compulsory saving allowed them to utilize for funding their housing. So they can afford to pay for public housing, and the And also the design of the housing also involve the local to contribute on what they want to have in the development itself. Yeah, so it's part of the like co-creation and co-ownership of having their own housing itself. So and if to encourage also to build in social resilience here, right? As the housing estate, each block of the housing, the ratio allocate to the population is according to the population ratio, right? So for instance, if we have 75% of the population Chinese, so that apartment you have 75% of the Chinese, and then you have the 15% of the Malay and so on. So it's according, allocation is according to the races itself, so that we all each races live, they live and together, you know, so to encourage more social harmony, to get understand one another. And for the aging population, so the design of the house of the living space is according to the needs of aging population. So and if you live, they want to encourage more family oriented. So if you are living near to your parents, right, you get certain discount for buying the public housing and so on. Yeah, and if so, there's a lot of community out there to support the the poorest group of people. Yeah. So in Singapore, we can practically say that everyone got housing except maybe those who are living out, roaming around without living out outside, sleeping outside, are those sometimes have with family issues more than because of they have problem in living, have a roof to live on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. We have run out of time. So had you been into India, we would have honored you the scrolls and very nice memento. But that remains due for whenever you would visit. That would you can collect that. So with that, I hand over to Shujo.
Yeah, thank you.
So
I would love to
catch
visit
up with
India
you sometime
very
else.
soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ong, for sharing
thank you.
your insightful perspectives and experiences with us. We sincerely thank you for a thought-provoking seminar that reminded us that urban resilience is not something cities simply built, but something they govern together. I would also like to thank Professor Dr. Tathagat Chatterjee for his thoughtful moderation. With this, we conclude this plenary session 2.0. I kindly request all the participants and all the guests to follow the program schedule and proceed to the parallel technical sessions. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I'll request to stay for 5 minutes. Okay, for snack. Okay. So we have snacks. Okay. So we have certain refreshments outside the seminar hall. So I would like all of you to join us there after 5 minutes. Yes.
So, okay, Jackie, thanks once again. So you are missing the refreshments as well?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Have a good evening. Yeah.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.